Hi and welcome back to Youth with Rosie and Brad. Today I'm doing this session. You'll see in the title that it's quite a heavy session. It's a big topic, it's a really big topic, and I don't know why I decided to pick this. I thought it was a great idea until I started doing the research, but I stuck with it, and we are going to be looking at politics today. Everything is political, whether you like it or not. It just is, whether that's to do with money or to do with no money, whether it's to do with human rights or the lack of human rights. There is so many different things that falls into the political bracket, and I just want to be looking at where faith sort of lines up with that, and where especially Jesus would have lined up with that too. So in our country, we have two main political parties. We have loads of different political parties, but the main two are the Labour Party and the Conservative Party, and it tends to be between those two who wins the elections every 5 years. This is okay, and people, and I'm not trying to force people to believe any single way of politics is necessarily right. I have some friends of mine who are Christians, and they are very firm Labour supporters, or even paying members of the Labour Party, and I also have some friends who are Conservative voters and paying members of the Conservative Party who are also Christian. There are so many things that define our ways of thinking when it comes to politics, and that's okay. We all have different life experiences, we have different things in our lives that will make us maybe vote politically one way or another. But actually, Justin Welby said that Jesus is never party political. There is no wing of politics, either left or right, that can claim that God is being on their side. What the Archbishop of Canterbury is saying there is that Jesus is, you can't force Jesus into a box. You cannot force him into your left wing box or your right wing box or anywhere in between. Jesus is above all of that. So does that mean Jesus isn't political? Absolutely not. He was probably one of the most political figures of his time. Everything he did was always about political justice, especially social justice, which again is a huge political issue. So we're going to be exploring that a bit. But it's also to remember that his historical life ended with a political execution. The crucifix, being crucified, was used by the Romans for those who systematically rejected imperial authority. So that meant that Jesus, who fought against the system of that time, died by the Roman crucifix, which was something that they did against anyone who went against their system, which is why Jesus was crucified, because that is how they saw him. They saw him as a rebel against their system. Now, that's not the only time that he got in trouble in terms of politics and stuff like that, because I think, as a lot of people know, he didn't always necessarily get on with the Pharisees. Now, the Pharisees were religious leaders of the time, kind of like a minister, in the sense that they teach the law, but hopefully a minister isn't quite like a Pharisee in the way that they behave. So I'm just going to read us a bit of a passage from Matthew 23. The whole thing, if you wanted to read it, was 13 to 39, but I'm just going to focus on Matthew 23, 23 to 28. So it's called the 7 woes of the teachers of the law and the Pharisees. So starting at 23, it says, "Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You give 1/10 of your spices, mint, dill and cumin, but you have neglected the more important matters of the law, justice, mercy and faithfulness. You should have practiced the latter without neglecting the former. You blind guides, you strain out a gnat but swallow a camel. Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You clean the outside of a cup and dish, but inside they are full of greed and self-indulgence. Blind Pharisee, first clean the inside of the cup and dish, and then the outside will also be clean. Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You are like whitewashed tombs, which look beautiful on the outside, but on the inside are full of the bones of the dead and everything unclean. In the same way, on the outside you appear to people as righteous, but on the inside you are full of hypocrisy and wickedness. Jesus is going mad here, like he's on a mad one about the injustice that is going on, especially in the leaders of the temple and of the teachings. This is so unbelievably political because the Pharisees had so much power in those days. And what he raises mainly is that they are doing one thing, and what they're doing is completely against the teaching of what God is saying. The one that really stuck out to me is the first one that I read, when it says, you give a tenth, so he's on about tithing here, of spices, mint, dill and cumin, but you've neglected the more important matters of life, which is of the law, justice, mercy and faithfulness. Justice, he's wanting justice, and he's seeing these political leaders and these religious leaders who are not fulfilling the law in that way. They are disrespecting God almost in the way that they act, in the way that they treat people, and that is, to Jesus, just not good enough. He calls them blind. He's so frustrated with them. So I think I read 3 woes, and there's 7 of them in total. The second and the third one that I read are both about the same thing, about how they want to appear a certain way on the outside, but actually on the inside they're completely dead almost. So the whitewashed tombs, that was so that they stood out. So at that time, if you saw a whitewashed tomb, like it'd stand out and they'd know that that's a grave. So what he's saying is, you want to appear to be so perfect, but actually you're just like a grave in the fact that there's just death and stuff inside you, which is a really hard issue, a really hard insult actually, that you can appear how you want, but unless you are living a life of justice, mercy and faithfulness, then what is the point as leaders, you know? And that is actually a hard thing for any Christian leader to maybe get around. Like, are we appearing to be perfect for the sake of being perfect, but are our insides dead? Or are we a little bit rough on the outside, but actually our insides is bursting with the love of Christ? Which is probably an issue for another day actually. So Jesus did more than his fair share on standing up for the poor and criticising those who only benefit themselves. I think this is something for us to live by. I think the Bible has so many different passages that relate to caring for the poor and issues like that. So it's important really that we recognise that some of us might be in a place of privilege. We might be maybe a little bit more wealthy, or maybe even things that we see as menial, like the colour of our skin. That gives us, if we're white, we have a better chance of opportunities in life just because we're white, and that's unfair. It's how do we respond to that? How do we as Christians, as people, respond to that? That's what's really important, and that's what Jesus is saying here. When he challenges authority, it's not because, I mean, he does have all the answers, of course he does, but he's not doing it because he's wanting to prove that he's this almighty being. He's being humble, and he's saying, serve those who you are meant to be serving. Don't pretend to be something you're not, and focus on that. There was a time of my life where I was actually really anti-establishment. I would class myself as a punk. I had a Mohican, which doesn't mean that I am a punk necessarily, but it was my views. It was my views is that the government were corrupt, and I'd had enough of it all. And you know, part of me still sort of can relate to that. I think there is a lot of corruption in politics, but my faith has taught me that actually the best way to influence politics is to be involved in it, is to understand it, is to do what Jesus did and to challenge those who are above us who we believe to be acting wrong. And that is a really good lesson for us all to learn from Jesus, is that if you think a leader is doing something wrong, it's how do you maybe not, start telling people they're dead inside, that's not what I'm saying, but if it's a correct way of challenging our political leaders to say, actually, what about that person on the street who is struggling to eat or has nowhere to sleep tonight? How do we get involved in that? So my challenge for you this week is to stand up somehow, somewhere for people who are disadvantaged. That could just be, maybe you pass somebody on the street who is begging for money and is homeless, and normally you might walk past them, but maybe you give them a £5 this week. Or maybe it's writing a letter to your council or your local MP and saying, why is this poverty allowed to happen? Why are kids struggling to eat? It's a real issue. There's so many things. There's so much political stuff in this Bible, and it's unbelievable how still relatable it is today. I'm going to pray for us as we always do. I hope that this has blessed you. I hope you've learned something. I hope that it's challenged you as well. But I'm just going to pray. So Father God, thank you for the gift of your Son, who was not afraid to stand up in times of need, to stand up for the people who are marginalised and treated poorly by leaders, Lord. And I pray that you give us the courage to stand up for what we believe in, which is that everyone should be able to receive your love, and to do that sometimes we have to act on that, Lord. So give us the courage to be able to act on that this week. Amen. So guys, I really hope you enjoyed this video. Sorry it's been a bit sporadic. I've had 2 cups of coffee and I'm absolutely buzzing. If you like the video, give it a like, subscribe, share it with your friends if you think this is appropriate and you think somebody could learn something from this. We hope that you have a great week, and I will see you soon. Cheers everyone.